For the board of directors of any organization, whether nonprofit, for-profit, the three main things you want to think about when dealing with a crisis are: first, recognize you want to act swiftly but cautiously. Directors need to understand that our roles never change. We're always still bound by the same fiduciary duties, whether we're acting in a crisis mode or in our day-to-day responsibilities. Encompassed in that is understanding we need to understand all material facts and materially available information before we make a decision to ensure that we're taking the best course of action for the organization going forward. The second thing for boards to consider is not one director has any more authority than any other director when it comes to taking action on behalf of the organization. That's important, especially in nonprofit organizations, because a lot of our directors are volunteers that really believe in the organization, believe in the mission of the organization. And so they want to go out of their way to help. Unfortunately, even some innocuous statements to the general public, if they're not authorized and are given specific authority by the board to make those statements, they're going to be violating their duties and potentially taking an act that's beyond what the board as a whole had determined was the most appropriate act for the organization. Third, boards aren't always in the react-only mode. We can take steps today to think, what action should we take if a crisis arrives? That could include creating maybe a special committee of the board that would come into force, that's already been delegated with certain authority to act. Dedicating a team, assembling our team of individuals that would be both board members, maybe legal counsel, professionals in the communications industry, as well as staff members to help guide us through the crisis. And then also, we need to consider what is our end game. And by planning ahead, understand that our role is to protect the most important asset of the organization, its reputation.
When dealing with a crisis, if you're a not-for-profit, there are a few ideas I'd like to leave you with. When you're thinking about preparing yourself for a crisis, you really need to be aware of all of the things that possibly could go wrong, be on the alert for things that might be brewing, and to always be thinking about how we can protect ourselves from risk, as well as to get ready when an inevitable crisis hits. In this day and age, in this type of an environment that we're living in, it's safe to say that every organization is going to encounter a crisis at some point. As a not-for-profit dealing with a crisis, it's important to remember that you want to engage as many people in the organization as possible. People who would be on the front line, your board, your management team, anybody who can bring wisdom, perspective, or a different point of view to the discussion and the planning process. The third idea I'd like to leave you with is that crisis planning is a process and not a project. As you develop the plan, you finalize the plan, but then you need to keep it fresh and alive and keep it constantly current. This requires you to revisit and review the plan from time to time to make your organization stronger as a result.
With regard to social media and crisis communication in your organization, here are three things that you need to keep in mind. Number one, plan ahead. Develop a thoughtful policy that appropriately suits your organization. Number two, educate and train your employees. A policy is not worth very much if you don't take the time to talk to your employees about it and make sure that they understand how truly public their communications are on social media. Number three, don't overreact. Be mindful of what is a lawfully protected publication on social media and that this is the world we operate in today and this is how people communicate.